Oscar Piastri, Australia's Kimi Räikkönen, the boy who's gone from karting in Melbourne to chasing a world championship in 2025 with McLaren. He's had quite his ups and downs from his rookie season to now year 3, where the McLaren is looking like the top car. And while he is ice cold on the track, off track or on camera, this guy is quite the personality and really a great face for Australia to have him as a Formula 1 driver.
So you're looking at possibly, you think you could go for a win in this championship this year, constructors-wise as well?
Well, we're not aiming to finish second, so...
Like to hear it, glad to hear it.
He's given us plenty of key moments, but I want to talk about his career and really why I believe he is a contender for this world championship and possibly could win it all this year if he puts it all together. Right before I get into the bigger part of the video, I wanted to thank you guys for support on the channel. It's been outstanding and it truly means the world for me. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. And in my description, if you actually want to use my code Unchained, they'll give you 15% off of the Legacy Edition in F125. Just follow the link in my description. But let's get started on Oscar Piastri's rise from rookie to now contender. Oscar Piastri was born on April 6, 2001 in Melbourne. But before he even dreamed of being an F1, he started his karting career at 9 years old, which is pretty late nowadays, considering we have drivers that have started at 3, 4, and even 5 years old. But while his spark for the sport started a little bit later than everybody else, he proved to be extremely fast and had his dad actually working as an engineer and constantly fixing his karts. He became pretty well known very early and continued to prove that in junior formula. He really wasn't messing around. By 2016, he was in junior formulas and was continuing to be dominant in any type of category they threw him in. In 2019, he takes the Formula Renault Euro Cup with 7 victories and showing off his aggressive but also smooth style while driving. In 2020 was when he jumped into the traditional F3, F2 going into F1, and with Prema wins the title as a rookie, super tight finish with Théo Pourchaire, won by 3 points, but was still a very good outing for him. Then in 2021, straight after Formula 3 goes into F2, still with Prema and does it again, being one of the only people to win F3 and F2 in consecutive seasons, matching the likes of a Charles Leclerc, George Russell, and not many others. He had 5 poles in that year, 6 victories, and he's actually the only guy to ever snag a Formula Renault Championship, F3 and F2, all consecutively. So a back-to-back-to-back. And with that, he was called up into Formula 1, but not as a driver, as a reserve for the start. Crazy to think that Oscar Piastri was ever a reserve to begin with and wasn't just thrown into the sport to show off how good he was, but in 2022, he was a reserve for Alpine, where Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon were competing for those seats continuously, and both very good drivers, obviously one being a 2-time world champion and Esteban Ocon being a driver that has some victories under his belt and very consistent. Now this is where it gets pretty juicy because obviously if you've been keeping up with the sport since the beginning of Oscar Piastri's career, then you probably remember the Alpine drama and McLaren move. While he was a reserve for Alpine, Fernando ended up bailing on the team after the 2022 season, where they were pretty much undermining him as a driver and wanting to give him very trashy type contracts. So Fernando moves to the team in green. They go for an emergency meeting, call up Oscar Piastri, who was secretly looking at other contracts behind closed doors, which was the smart move to make extremely now, looking at it in hindsight. But they make an announcement without actually his approval on Twitter, saying he's joined the team, and Oscar Piastri actually ends up responding saying, hold up, wait a minute, this is not what's actually happening.
Constructors Championship, you'll see that you have moved up above Alpine and more points scored today than the rest of the season combined. This is a huge moment for McLaren.
Pretty much made Alpine look like clowns, and he inked a deal with McLaren, joining the team for 2023, making it his first Formula 1 season. Now at the start of the year in testing, McLaren looked horrible, and then the Bahrain GP came and this car looked like a dog. Understeering everywhere, nothing was working correctly, just a clunky tractor out there. In his debut, it was a total letdown. The car broke down, at some point they had to change the steering wheel, they ended up pitting a bunch of times with Lando as well. It was quite the embarrassing race for McLaren to start off the season. And that's probably quite a lot for a rookie to take. Hopping in like this saying, really, this is my debut, not even really getting much track time in a race. But the next session comes in Jeddah, he out-qualifies Lando by a good bit, and if it wasn't for some damage on the first lap, which really wasn't his fault, there was a possibility of him hopping into the points with that tractor of a car in the start of the season. Now he does a good job, keeps up with Lando, nothing crazy, very normal rookie start to the season, but very rarely making mistakes. The team finally ramps up in Austria where they bring a big upgrade package, and this is really the start of the resurgence for McLaren and where more eyes are put on to the Australian Oscar Piastri. He gets those upgrades in Silverstone and automatically performs in such a fashionable way. He would have been on the podium if it wasn't for a blunder that McLaren made towards the end, but kept up with Lando throughout the whole GP and showed off how quick he was. In Japan, he ends up getting his first podium, battling a bit with Leclerc, but keeping up also with Lando, while they both finished behind Max Verstappen, who was obviously the dominating force in 2023. But this was the start of a very little segment in 2023 where Oscar Piastri genuinely looked like, if not the best driver. Obviously, Max was very dominant here, but Oscar had quite the performances for a rookie season. He ends up winning in Qatar the sprint race, actually holding back both Lando and Max, and showed off the mentality this kid has. Ice cold, didn't even really make a big deal out of it, even though it was quite the victory to have in a season where only one other time that Red Bull lost. Before these two performances, he had quite the spot as well where he was leading the race at some points, but there was a little bit of inexperience there as he was still pretty weak on his tires, but naturally every rookie starts off like that. Formula One is very tricky to get under on the tires. His sophomore season in F1, 2024, was a completely different look at him. Yes, his race pace was lacking at times and so was his qualifying, but he had some amazing performances, Hungary being one of them, and while it was a mess at the end of the GP and McLaren pretty much ruined what was supposed to be a very nice first victory, Lando ended up giving him back the lead, but he was very dominant in the first stint, and it was just the start of victories to come. Baku was, in my opinion, still one of his best races in his career, where he held back Charles Leclerc towards the end there, was super smart on his tires on a track that does have some degradation, and it's very easy to toss it on the wall. Baku has been phenomenal for him in his career, so has Jeddah. He really loves those street tracks. And it was around this time during Hungary and Baku where he was recovering from a broken rib, which really wasn't even talked about. There's a couple of beautiful shots of them sliding through. The pressure was on the whole race, and he held on to, as I said, one of his still best victories in Formula One. He also helped out Lando when he could in certain other GPs, and there still were times of brilliance. In Brazil, that probably would have been his victory if he didn't let Lando through towards the end there, and it was easy to see the kid really has it, and he's going to give Lando a very tough time come 2025. Now that we're in the 2025 season, Oscar has already showed he's not here to play. Season starts in Australia, and while his finishing spot was 9th, he was competing with Lando for most of the GP, was faster at moments in the race, and both of them end up going off. Lando is the better out of the two, just had a little bit less speed going back onto the track, which helped him out. Oscar Piastri puts his everything into making it back onto the track, does has a beautiful overtake on Lewis Hamilton towards the end of that GP. But you could see the kid was fired up. This definitely hurt him. And I think it put a chip on his shoulder to give us what was a beautiful China GP weekend. In the sprint race, he grabs a P2, but what's even better is he finally gets his first pole position in China, where he extracts a pretty crazy lap time, where he made a mistake in sector 1 but made it all up in sector 3 towards those last turns. He ends up grabbing 32 out of the 33 points given on that weekend with a victory in China, dominant fashion. Lando was never even really close, and while he did have a brake problem towards the end, I do think this was Oscar's win, no matter the brake problem or not. And as always, cool as a cucumber, doesn't even really make a big fuss out of it. Very much Kimi Räikkönen style.
Great job, mate. And it's a 1-2 for the team.
Yeah, mega job, guys. Mega job.
He's different, he's more mature now than he was in 2024, and as he has said, he has all the tools now to really put himself in a contending position for 2025, so why do I believe he can fight Lando in this season or whoever else is going to be up there? Last year in 24, while his race pace wasn't consistent, him finishing the races was. He never didn't finish a lap, one of the only people to actually have that achievement, 1 of 5, and even on his bad days, he was still decent. We gotta remember this is a kid with 3 years and we have very high expectations very quickly, but he's mainly been matching Lando on most weekends. It's in the race where Lando has that a bit of experience, and I still think he's a little bit faster, but Oscar is getting up to that point. In his McLaren MCL 39, while it is hard to use, it seems like Oscar might be getting the better out of the both. The difference between mentalities is also another thing. As I've stated before, he really reminds me of Kimi Räikkönen, who comes in there to race and win. Nothing else is really on his mind. Lando seems to have a bit of a different mentality coming here into 2025, but he's still missing that edge that Oscar has, that ice cold, I don't really care what's going to happen, I'm going to make it a victory, kind of like Max. On lap 1, I would argue he's one of the best starters on the grid, up there with Max Verstappen and probably Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. We saw that dive he made in Monza. Some people didn't appreciate it, and even I didn't in the moment, but damn, looking back at it, it was quite the move. And this was only one of many times that we saw him make moves like this on either a challenger or his teammate himself. He's also special off track, as I mentioned. That mentality, he's quiet, dry, hilarious in his own way. And while he's never very screamy and enthusiastic on the radios, they're always quite the funny moments to hear him just say, "Cheers team, good stuff." Nothing crazy, like he just went out for a chill drive. The moments he's given us, like the COTA jetpack fail, is just amazing. The faces this guy makes are lovely and funny, and his real personality has really came out. There doesn't seem to be any more anxious nervousness there. He's just a chill guy, and I think that's why a lot of people in the sport love him and appreciate him. Oscar Piastri's rise is definitely unreal, and he's got that it factor. I think this is the season that he can take it. It's going to be very close, and I'm not saying he's the better out of the two. Both drivers have a chance here, but considering it's this guy's 3rd season, he's already up there in contention with Lando, fighting with Max at times, making even a beautiful overtake in the sprint there, and has that very chill charm. I would love to see him up there. He's not favorited in the season. It seems like a lot of people are leaning towards Lando, but I would never count out a guy like this who's improved so quickly and shown us how fast of a driver he can be when he puts it all together on the weekend. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you guys think? What's your opinion on Oscar Piastri in general? Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world. And peace.